And also joining us this afternoon is the former Dean of the UP Asian Center, Dr. Henelito Sevilla Jr. Dr. Sevilla is an international relations and Middle Eastern studies expert. Sir, magandang hapon and welcome to the Story Conference or Storycon. Sir, nag-uusap kami kanina. I suppose the question in everybody's mind is how much further is this going to go? Of course, we had fighting from the same three countries last year, pero this time super escalation kasi you had the decapitation.
UAE.
You had decapitation of the leadership of Iran. Tapos you also have Iran firing rockets into other Gulf states as well. So, yeah, question in a lot of people's minds is this going to escalate further and by how much?
I am not affirmative that the conflict will end soon. I think it will escalate further for as long. You heard recently that President Trump has just mentioned that he will do something else, because of the killings of or the death of the three American servicemen.
Mm-hmm.
So we expect that the escalations will further, and from the Iranian side, for as long as it is not satisfied with what it is doing now, targeting the American interests within the Middle East region, I think the question about when it will end is so far as of now unanswerable.
Ang inattack, Professor, are the US bases in the Gulf. Siyempre, magre-retaliate yan. Although si Trump, meron siyang record na naglo-launch ng operation ng mga short-lived, high-impact, short-lived. So kung gano'n na we're expecting retaliation from the US dahil nga yung mga bases nila binobomba. Kapag gano'n, ano yung projection niya? What might happen? Well, first of all, sa Iran and for the rest of the region.
Well, ang mahalaga dito kung ano yung magiging respond ng mga Arab countries na kung saan ang US interest ay nakabase doon, in response to the sending of missiles of the Iranian government to these US facilities, because for them this is something that includes their sovereignty. Pero from the Iranian perspective, they said that these US facilities are part of the American diplomatic immunity, and it's not considered as a territory of those countries because this is covered by diplomatic immunity. This is the position of the Iranian government. However, I think there are the Arab countries are now calling for a meeting in which they would discuss how to respond to this escalation. So I'm sure that Arab countries, particularly those that are allied of the US, will respond. But as to what extent and into what form they would respond is still unthinkable until now. But military response probably. But I think there is also what we call the backdoor diplomacy, negotiation between and among themselves on how to settle this issue.
On the point about them hitting the U.S. bases, but actually there were other civilian targets rin. They struck the airports. There was a time when Saudi Arabia didn't think that Iran would hit them, but they have at this point. There was that strike on that tinamaan yung Burj Al Arab, and it feels at this point that they have been pushed to the edge, essentially at this point. What do you think? Is there still any? Because when you listen to the rhetoric of both sides, the U.S. is also saying, we are willing to do everything we can to see this through, and then you have also on the side of Iran saying that they will fight till the end, and what the end means, we don't know at this point. But you've been following the Middle East for a long time. How do you think it might play out?
Kaya nakakalungkot isipin na ang mga civilians are biktima rin sa ganitong pagsalakay. We need to understand also that prior to Iran respond, the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran also decapitated or targeted one school in Minab in the southern part of the province of Khuzestan province, which led to the killing of 100 plus pupils. So the civilians were actually have actually become the yung parang collateral damage, and this is not supposed to be. The civilians should be protected. Now, I'm not saying that these Iranian targets to US utilities or facilities in these countries will 100% target those facilities. There will be some sort of parang mga mishap na kung saan ang mga civilians mismo na nakatira doon malapit sa area na yon ay magiging collateral rin sa ano na. This is very unacceptable, no? So both sides, the U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran resulted into this killing. Both sides, I think, need to answer why human beings, civilians, non-combatants, are supposed to be part of this, as a collateral damage dito sa gerang ito.
Sir, we understand it was a decapitation strike. Marami dun sa top leadership ng Iran tinamaan dun sa initial strikes. Well, that's one thing altogether. But of course, the bigger question would be, sino ipapalit o sinong papalit? Are we what's the likelihood that you will get somebody more moderate or even more conservative than the one that they are replacing? What do you foresee po?
Yeah, I'm not sure about whether or not the next supreme leader of Iran would be moderate or conservative, but we just follow what the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran says, that during the, pag namatay yung supreme leader, constitutional process will follow, no? And that means that the assembly of experts, which is composed of 88 members, will actually appoint or elect who would be the next supreme leader. And as of now, I tried to browse before I joined this room. No, nakikita ko na they have already chosen an interim supreme leader in the person of Ayatollah Ali Riza Arafi. No, and he is a senior Iranian cleric. And besides, during the time where they have not finally chosen the supreme leader, the process would be that the three important political figures in Iran, the president, the head of the judiciary, and the representative of the assembly of experts, a guardian council, will be the one, coordinating, collaborating with each other to manage the affairs of the state. So this is in spite of the decapitation that happened during the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. So do we expect some sort of what we call problem here? I think not, because they have already in their mind who would be the next supreme leader. It's just a matter of formalizing, and debating probably within the assembly of experts who would be the next supreme leader of Iran.
And can you tell us more about the interim, yung interim supreme leader na napili? Can you tell us more about the political inclinations? Is he a moderate or kapareho din ng Khamenei?
Yeah, based on the record, he is a Shiite cleric. I'm not sure if he is moderate or not, but he is he belongs to the family of cleric, and he is from Yazd province.
Yes.
He was born 1959, and he is considered to be probably the alter ego or representative of Ayatollah Khomeini in many of the affairs that Ayatollah Khomeini could not or would not be able to attain. So he represents the former supreme leader, and. Yeah, I'm not sure whether he is a conservative or moderate or what, because I just heard his name just a few days ago.
Sir, I guess the conflict will be if the U.S. Because the U.S. has its own ideas about who should now govern Iran, right? And initially, President Trump did not, in his video announcing the strike, he didn't say that the goal was regime change, but later on, he admitted to the reporters that the goal was regime change, and of course, they're trying to cripple Iran's ballistic missile and nuclear program. So, I guess the conflict there is if hindi sila sasang-ayon sa bagong supreme leader that Iran has chosen, that the council has chosen, what then?
I think it's very clear from the very beginning that the Trump administration doesn't like the theocratic government in Iran, and they want regime change, and this is not something new for us, because for the past 4 decades, the U.S. government in different administrations really pursued this kind of regime change activities to decapitate the Iranian Islamic government, and this is the ultimate goal, because they want that a president or the one who is managing the country should be somewhat pro-West or pro-American in that sense. Yeah. So the question is whether or not if the Trump administration would not like the one who is elected, then what would happen? Then siguro antabayan natin kung anong gagawin ni Trump. But marami na po ang namatay at the damage has been there already, and that will continue until de-escalation will take place between and among these parties.
Just to be clear,
Well, is there...
good, Ami.
Yeah, is there any chance anyway? Kasi kasama dyan, of course, is a major factor is Israel. And for the longest time, ang impression ng mga tao is isang objective ng Iran is to annihilate the Jewish state. Meron bang pagbabago in that kind of, yeah. Meron bang pagbabago within the population ng Iran? Kasi of course, the government represents the people. Meron bang pagbabago dun sa ganong pag-iisip within Iran, kung sakasakali man?
It is not true that the Iranian would want to annihilate or exterminate the Jewish population in Iran. Where in fact,
merong ganong impression from Israel
yeah,
na
that's
yung
not true.
government
That's not-
ng Iran, which is representing the people, yun ang gustong gawin. Pero,
Well, in fact,
yun na nga.
if you go to Iran, the constitution
Yeah.
recognize the representation of the Jewish community within the country, and they form part of an integral, part of the Iranian society. But I think our analysis should focus on whether or not Iran likes the Israeli as a political entity, because Iran said that the Israel is a Zionist regime, and Iran tries to separate it from the religious aspect, which is Judaism, because Iran respects Judaism. So this is something that the world has not been able to comprehend it well, deeply. I think there is a difference between what Iran said Zionism and what Iran said Judaism. So this thing. So I think to say that Iran wants to annihilate or to exterminate or to remove this Judaism or the Jewish faith, I think is incorrect. Where in fact the Jewish Iranians are living freely in Iran. I don't know. That's my opinion because I've been in contact with them when I was a student in Iran during those times, no, and I know that they have also representation in the Iranian parliament.
Sir, let's talk about the impact on the Philippines. Immediately, there are two issues that come to mind. Number one, of course, our heavy reliance on the Middle East crude oil. When it comes to crude, yung raw, unprocessed oil, nearly 100% of that we import from the Middle East, specifically Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, Oman, etc. And then the second issue is, of course, the OFWs. There's about 40, by some estimates, according to BPI, for example, at least 40% of the OFWs are based in the Middle East. Talk us through that. Alin dito yung, what are you most worried about here?
Well, I'm most worried about both of them. Of course, there is a direct implications of the closure of this Hormuz Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, by the Iranian Islamic Government Revolutionary Guard. If you heard from the news that you would know that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz already, and this was a topic that we had before, no, when we had this kind of interview during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. And finally, Iran has closed this Strait of Hormuz. I also heard that Iran is allowing, with some sort of limited mobility, Chinese missile in those areas. But the closure of the Strait of Hormuz would basically create some sort of volatility in terms of oil prices in the global market. And the Philippines, as you made mention, is so much dependent from the importation of crude oil from the Gulf. Of course, we also import finished product, gasoline or finished petroleum product from the Platte of Mines in Singapore. But mostly our crude oil is actually imported from the GCC. With the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, we expect that there will be an implication with regards to the stability of prices of oil in the Philippines and of course in the global market. Now, how would it impact the Philippines? Well, it would impact basic commodities because many of them are being transported and that requires oil, and of course, basic commodities and services. And once the oil price goes up, then the ordinary people, the ordinary Filipinos, would be affected. No, the purchasing power of Filipinos in regards to with regards to buying basic commodities that are being impacted by the oil prices. So I checked also the price of oil in the global market. Brent mentioned that prior to the attack, the price was below 70 or around 70. Now the price is about 80 plus, and we expect that the price of oil in the coming days will rise maybe to 190 to $100 per barrel.
Sir.
So with regards to OFW, I think the scope of the war is not just confined within the bilateral countries between Israel and Iran. So since Iran is sending missiles to different countries within the GCC region, then the implication would be the danger that the safety of our Filipinos living in those areas. And we are talking about thousands of Filipinos here because these GCC countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, and even Kuwait, are hosting a large number of Filipino workers.
Sir, kabilang ako, sir. I find it really interesting when you mentioned kanina yung government structure ng Iran. You have the supreme leader, you have the president, you have the assembly of experts. Of course, Filipinos are not familiar with that. We're only familiar with presidente, vice presidente, Kongreso, Korte Suprema. Can you quickly run us through that? Who holds what power? I understand that the supreme leader is more powerful than the president and can even dismiss the president.
Yes.
Yeah, the supreme power, the supreme leader is most powerful than the president. It has the power to determine strategic and critical aspects of the Iranian life, Iranian operation. The president would more or less respond to socio-economic aspect, but with regards to security, foreign policy, and other things, the supreme leader holds that power. And then you have the assembly of experts. They are actually elected every 8 years, I think, and they comprise of 88 members, and they are the one electing the supreme leader, and they can also remove the supreme leader. But so far, from 1979 until this time, there were only 2 supreme leaders, and now we will have the third one. Now there is another one, the guardian of council, which is responsible of appointing, I think, representatives to the to the interim government, to the transition, and the guardian of council is considered to be the watchdog of the Iranian constitution. So they determine the make sure that the constitution is fully and concretely implemented. And then there is another one, the expediency council. So these structures are actually complex. If you don't understand this, if you don't have a deeper reading about the Iranian political system, sometimes you may be able to confuse yourself, how these structures function and will coordinate with each other.
There are institutions, but ultimately it's the supreme leader who holds tremendous power, and to a point where he's almost unchecked. Correct?
So, if I may summarize it, there are 2 political structures: one which is being elected, and the other one which is not being elected. The supreme leader is not elected directly by the people, but they're elected by the assembly of experts.
Para siyang prime minister.
And the assembly of experts are coming from different, professions.
So parang siyang, in a way, sir, I know it's kind of rough and crude sa comparison, pero parang prime minister, the parliamentarians are elected by the people, and the parliamentarians elect their prime minister.
More like a
Maybe,
monarch, I
but I
guess.
think the Iranian political system is so unique in that sense, because the supreme leader need to be a senior scholar, Islamic scholar. So they call it wilayat al-faqih, wilayat al-faqih.
Prof, I read your article that you published a few months ago titled The Middle East Crisis Perspectives from the Philippines. One of your conclusions is that the crisis is a ripe opportunity for forging new alliances and challenging the dominance of Western geopolitical infrastructure. What did you mean by that?
Can you say it again?
Your article from last year on the Middle East crisis, back when there was there were tensions, but it hasn't blown out into all-out war. You wrote that on the geopolitical front, this is a ripe opportunity for forging new alliances and challenging the dominance of the Western geopolitical infrastructure. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, because if you look at the geopolitical infrastructure of the Middle East region, starting from even before the 1953, where the U.S. Started to, to have this kind of relationship with the region, it is more or less Western, and the U.S. dominated the geopolitical structure. It establishes an alliance system. But current development in the Middle East is telling us that there may be some possibility of challenging this Western geopolitical structure that exists long time ago in the Middle East region. So from the European influence to the entry of US in the region, now you have China coming into the region and, strategically positioning itself in terms of trade and other activities. So this is a kind of structure that I'm talking about.
Who might fill the void, do you think? I mean, tama naman, the US under Trump has been turning more isolationist, right, from being internationalist. They've turned inwards. Now it's all about make America great again, America first. Although, although Trump has bombed 8 countries by now, from a foreign policy perspective, he's made it turn more inward. So who might step into this void?
If you're talking of the possibility of external powers to step in, right? We have seen the development of relations between China and many Arab countries, including Iran. And China has forged comprehensive partnership with Iran and strategic partnerships with other countries in the region. So probably China, but in terms of military support and other, military activities in which the U.S. has done for a long time, China has not been able to demonstrate it until today, except with the economic engagement that China has with many of these countries in the region. Yet China is also looking at the possibility of safeguarding its interests, particularly in the fluid maritime route in the Horn of Africa, in which China in the past, I think, sent some vessels there to secure its interest, its vessel that passed through the Horn of Africa. So there is what I observed. There is a defining moment now that that the coming of China to the region and the aggressive economic partnership of China to the region may actually result into somehow political as well as even to the extent of security, because China wanted to secure also this kind of interest that it has in the Middle East region. Remember that China is one of the major importer of oil in the Gulf region as well as in Africa. Since 1993, China started to become a net importer of oil from being a net exporter of oil. And it's not just about oil that we are talking about here. We're also talking about the rare earth materials that China imported from other parts of Northern Africa and other parts of African continent. So it all passes through the Persian Gulf. And this Persian Gulf is very important. That's why for China, I think, and other powers, I think the stability of this particular part of the region must be preserved, because any problem or any security threats may have a direct implications to the products or to the importations that to the trade that they are doing, in that part of the globe.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Thank you so much for joining Storycon and sharing all of your insights, Dr. Henelito Sevilla Jr. Sir, did I understand correctly? You're no longer the dean of the Asian Center at UP.
I'm no longer the dean now.
Okay.
I'm just enjoying my sabbatical
Okay.
leave for a year.
Okay, so I will say former dean of the Asian Center at UP Diliman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Bye-bye.